I'm here with Dr. Mark Goldfeder, who is a constitutional scholar. He is also the director of the National Jewish Advocacy Center. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so I brought you here to talk about the situation that we're watching play out, in which there is growing anti-Semitic sentiment on college universities, and most recently, three NYU students are suing their university for not doing a better job at protecting them. Largely, university presidents are staying relatively muted on the topic, and are either outright pointing to the need to protect freedom of speech or alluding to that need to protect it. You said that those presidents, those university leaders, are either misunderstanding or misinterpreting freedom of speech and how it should be protected. Can you explain that to me?
Sure. I'll start by saying that it's absolutely true that freedom of speech and even offensive and hateful speech should be protected. The really important thing to consider is that there are limits to what constitutes speech, and there are rules for when that speech crosses over into actionable unlawful conduct. So, for example, the First Amendment does not protect trespassing or vandalism or harassment or assault or the destruction of property. It doesn't protect speech that's not meant to inform or persuade, but rather to disrupt lawful endeavors like going to the library or eating in the kosher dining hall. It doesn't protect someone who's making true threats. The Supreme Court in Virginia v. Black said it's statements where the speaker means to communicate a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence to a particular individual or group of individuals. It doesn't protect intimidation. Just a few months ago in Counterman versus Colorado, the Supreme Court clarified that the intent standard for true threats is not that the person speaking actually intends to threaten the victim. It's that a person who consciously disregards a substantial risk that their communications would be viewed as threatening violence. And all of the above have occurred on American college campuses in recent weeks, if not days. But I would say that the problem here is actually even more acute, and this is what I meant by misapplying the First Amendment. There's no First Amendment protection for speech that involves incitement, which the court in Brandenburg versus Ohio explained, speech directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action. And that's a very, very high standard. But the truth is that even a public university is not a public street, and that is not the standard that they should be using on campuses. Brandenburg is the wrong standard for schools to be using, and university presidents and general counsels should correct that misunderstanding, because in Tinker versus Des Moines, the Supreme Court found that the Constitution does allow for schools in particular to regulate speech that will, and I'm quoting here, materially and substantially interfere with the requirements of appropriate discipline in the operation of that school, or if it would invade the rights of others. That is the standard that these schools should be vigilantly enforcing. Now, of course, private colleges and universities are completely different. They can restrict certain speech without triggering any constitutional issues. But again, even a public university, the rules for what speech is allowed are different than what courts are saying. And the Supreme Court in Healy versus James cited the Tinker standard to hold that university officials do not have to tolerate student activities that breach reasonable campus rules or interrupt the educational process or interfere with other students' rights to receive an education. And under Title VI, that right includes the right to receive that education in a harassment-free environment.